Good morning, everybody. It is time for us to begin. So says the clock on the wall. And since it would take longer to argue with it, I think we just might as well call it that. How about that? It's good to see everybody here this morning. Before we begin our class, let's go to God in prayer. God, we're thankful to you for the day you blessed us with, the time that you've allowed us to assemble here at this place to study from your word. We're asking that you bless us in our study this morning and help us to see these truths that you have laid out in your word. In Christ's name, amen. All right. We are on chapter 44 of Genesis. We are fast narrowing down, coming to the end of the book of Genesis. One of the things that you do, that you got to look forward to when we do get to the end of this, when we finish Genesis, Chris is going to pick up class, and I don't know what he's going to be teaching. It'll be truth one way or the other. I don't know what subject it'll be, but Chris is going to pick it up. He's going to teach for a while, and I was telling somebody this morning, as much as I absolutely love teaching this class, I do kind of need a break every now and then. So, all right. So, chapter 44. Now, when we left off week before last, one of the questions was, I wonder how far it really was for them to have to travel from where they were in Canaan to where they went to Egypt to buy grain. So I began to kind of look that up some. And of course, you know, when you Google this, you're going to get several different answers. You're never going to always get the same answer for this. As best I can tell, it's somewhere between 175 and 200 miles. So for the sake of figuring, let's call it 200 miles, because that's how it's going to be my illustration of how we're going to know how far this was. I also Googled the distance from my house to the state capitol in Atlanta, and it's 234 miles. So for the sake of easy figuring, you figure them boys had to walk from here to Atlanta, give or take a little bit. So they had their donkeys, they had all of them. I don't know who else they might have took with them. There might have been some household servants took with them. Who knows? I don't know. The Bible don't say that. It just says they went. Google also told me that you can walk that in 4 days. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If you're going to walk that in 4 days, you're going to be a pretty good trot. That ain't going to be no leisurely stroll. So I'm figuring the fact that they had all those animals, and they were going to have to stop periodically to feed the animals, rest themselves. So I'm thinking, probably close to a week. I'm thinking maybe not quite a week. You figured the time that you're going to need to stop and so forth and so on. I don't know how long how many hours a day they traveled, but I'm thinking probably 5 or 6 days would have been about the extent of that. Google also said that you could drive it in 3 hours and 25 minutes, and you could ride a bicycle in 2 days. So that'd be a pretty good clip on a bicycle too. So anyway, that just kind of shows you how far they had to go to get this grain. It also kind of goes to show you how how far Joseph was away from home when he was for all intents and purposes abducted and sent somewhere else. So, yeah, that was kind of a neat thing, I thought. So where we are right now is that when we last saw the brothers, they were at a banquet at Joseph's house. Joseph knew who they were, but they didn't know who Joseph was. And Joseph is needing to know what's on their mind. He needs to know if they've changed or not. Because the last interaction that he had with them 20 plus years ago wasn't nice, was it? They wanted to kill him, but they decided not to, and they decided since they wouldn't do that, they just sell him and get some money for it. So he needs to know that they've changed. He needs to know if they are repentant for what they've done. And I think we see God's hand in this too. Sometimes God needs to put his people through some things to make them to grow, to condition them. And perhaps that's what he's doing here with these brothers. Beginning with verse 1, and he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Also put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money. So he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away, they and their donkeys. When they had gone out of the city and were not yet far off, Joseph said to his steward, get up, follow the men. And when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, with which he indeed practices divination? You have done evil in so doing. All right, so Joseph is continuing to test his brothers, isn't he? I think we can safely say that Joseph had no intention of any harm befalling any of them. But he needed to know where they stood in their mind. Were they sorry for what they had done to him? Or were they the same old guys that they didn't care about anybody but themselves? And the thing here is that he needs to see how they're going to react with regards to Benjamin, Joseph's youngest brother. So he devises this plan to where he puts his silver cup, and back at this time there was it was understood by these ancient people that their the vicar, as Joseph would be referred to, could practice divination to get answers to questions. Well, I don't think there's anything that specifically says that he did do that, but he can use that as to his advantage too, that they may think that. So he had his steward fill them up, all they could put in the sacks, and put their money back. And of course, you have to think that maybe the steward was like, "What is he doing? Why is he doing this?" And then put that cup back in there too. So he does that. They let them leave, and then they overtake them, and he sets the stage for what comes next. Why are y'all repaying evil for good? I just gave y'all a big feast at my house, and this is how you pay me back? You steal from me? Really? All right. So then in verse 6, so he overtook them, and he spoke to them these words. And they said to him, "Why does my Lord say these words? Far be it from us that your servants should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks. How then could we steal silver or gold from our Lord's house? With whomever your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves." Then he said, "Now also let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be a slave, and you shall be blameless." Then each man speedily let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. So he searched and began with the oldest and left off with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. Uh-oh. So we're going to find out what they think now. So what did Israel tell his sons before they left? When they insisted that you're going to take Benjamin with them, what did he tell them? Better bring him back. Better bring him back. And if he don't come back, I'll probably just die. Because I'll be bereaved that much. 2 sons. So now this is what they're facing right now. And they've already made this foolish reply. We didn't do it. We don't have it. And if somebody does have it, let them die and we'll be slaves. You better be careful what you ask for sometimes, hadn't you? Do you remember the guy in Judges? And for the life of me, I can't remember his name right now. I know it good as I know my own. But he prayed that the Lord would give him the victory in battle. If you'll give me the victory in battle, I will offer as a burnt offering the first thing that sets foot out of my house. So the Lord gave him the victory in the battle. You know what was the first thing that set foot? His daughter, his virgin daughter. Be careful with the oaths you take. As soon as they saw that the cup was in Benjamin's possession, they tore their clothes, which is a sign of grief. Note, we remembered that Jacob did that when they told him about Joseph, didn't they? And now it's on them. So Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there, and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said to them, "What deed is this you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination?" Then Judah said, "What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are, my Lord's slaves, both we and he with whom the cup was found. But he said, Far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. And as for you, you shall go up in peace to your father. All right. So the first thing that they had said was, let's just kill whoever's got the cup, and the rest of us will be slaves. Well, apparently the steward for Joseph thought that was a bit much, and Joseph wasn't going to go along with that either. But they did say, we'll just let whoever's got the cup be the slave. That's not going to help these guys any, because they're fixing to go back home empty-handed to their father without Benjamin. And now what's going to happen is Benjamin is going to be a slave, and probably the grief of losing Benjamin in addition to Joseph is going to kill their father. And I think they realize that at this point. So they're in a bit of a dilemma. What do we do? We didn't do this. I think it's kind of telling here that they say the Lord has found out the iniquity of your servants. What do they mean? What do you think? I think what they did to Joseph is coming to haunt them now. That's what I think. They've been living with this for 20 plus years of what they did to him. And now it's all, the chickens is coming home to roost. But here's what I want you to look at. I want you to see what Judah says. Then Judah came near to him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's hearing. Do not let your anger burn against your servant, for you are even like Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age who is young. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. But you said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more. And so it was, when we went up to your servant, my father, that we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, Go back and buy us a little food. Well, we said, We cannot go down. If our youngest brother is with us, then we will go down. For we may not see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant's father, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. But if you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him, you shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, it will happen when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. So your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame for my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad as a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go to my father if the lad is not with me, lest perhaps I see the evil that would come upon my father? This is Judah saying this. This is the same Judah who 20 years ago said, let's sell him. Let's get rid of this dreamer. All he is just trouble for us. Let's sell him to them Ishmaelites. They first wanted to kill him, but then they decided they wouldn't do that. No, we won't do that. We'll just sell him. What do you know about Judah's character from way back? Judah was kind of a ruffian, wasn't he? Wasn't he involved in this thing with Shechem? There you go. Do you think he thought about it? He probably did. Where do you think that Judah come to act like that? What kind of household was he from? I'll give you a hint. Whenever they all picked up and left Laban, what did Rachel pick up and take with her? The household idols. So does that tell you that these older children were raised in a bit of an idolatrous time? Yeah. I think it does. So, that kind of bears the question, does the way children are raised have a impact on them? I believe so. But let's look at Judah now, which means that anybody can change, can't they? Judah, the same guy who several chapters before got involved in some level of harlotry, let's say. You remember the story with that? His sons kept dying off, and he was going to give his youngest son to his daughter-in-law, but he wasn't old enough yet. Then he decided to go back on it and didn't do that, and so she tricked him, slept with him. This was that same Judah, who now is begging for the life of his brother. The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Benjamin is about to be a slave in the house of Joseph, or so they think. These brothers are at a crossroads right now. they can say, well, okay, we'll just have to leave him and just be with Dad how it is. Or somebody can make a plea to save their brother. Now I want you to keep something in mind here. This is the second son of Rachel. Rachel was the favorite wife. Jacob loved Rachel more than his other wives. Joseph was his oldest son by that wife, and he loved him the most. Joseph is no longer there, so now that falls to Benjamin. And perhaps these brothers have come to terms with that. I don't know. Maybe they have. Why do you think that Judah was the one that did the speaking now? He's the third guy, the third son. Okay, so he is next in line. All right, so Reuben, Jacob long fell out with Reuben over a number of things, including the fact that Joseph is now gone. He's supposed to be taking care of him. Simeon was locked up in prison the whole time that they were using the rest of this food up. So Judah is the one who is now responsible for the safety and the well-being of Benjamin. And what we see right here in this passage is the most I think Judah has spoken in the whole time. But what he does here is he lays out the whole story. He reminds Joseph, this, you told us don't come back without Benjamin. And we convinced our father of that, knowing that if he didn't come back, that it was going to do him harm. So Judah gives this impassioned plea. To Joseph. If you got to keep somebody, let him go. Keep me. Do you think that maybe he gets it now? You think maybe Judah's starting to come around now? He's understanding how he's supposed to act. And I intentionally kind of hurried through this a little bit because I wanted us to get to the next chapter because it all goes together. And in chapter 45, beginning with verse 1, here's what we read. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer them, for they were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, the Lord of all his house, a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry up and go up to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me the Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. There are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept over them. After that his brothers talked with him. This is what we've been waiting on, ain't it? We've been waiting for the time that Joseph would reveal himself to his brothers. Can you see the excitement of Joseph? That now he can tell them who he is? How easy would it be for Joseph to have exacted swift and severe retribution to these brothers? How easy would that have been? He is the Lord of all of Egypt right now. The only person in Egypt that is over him is Pharaoh himself. Do you think that these dreams came back to the brothers? Do you think that they thought about and envisioned the stalks of grain, bundles of grain bowing down to one bundle? Do you think they thought about that? Do you think that they thought about the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down to him? You think that might have run through their minds? Those dreams that Joseph had? That he didn't really know what they meant at that point when he told them. But now they all know. That is one of the greatest, this is one of the greatest passages of love that I think I've seen. The love that Joseph had for his brothers, and the way that he treated them. This tells us a lot about Joseph's character, doesn't it? Anybody else perhaps would have wanted to get back at them, make them pay for what they did to him. But not Joseph. Joseph realized, Joseph understood that this was all God's doing for him to be there to preserve this family. What did God promise Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? Okay. All right. They would be fathers of multitudes, wouldn't they? So what would have happened had the whole family died out? That would have kind of made it look like, I wonder how God proposes to do this. But God had a plan. Sometimes we don't understand the way God's plans work, do we? What we are going to find later on, this is not the end of it. They still going to worry about it. But at this point, Joseph is reassuring them that God did this. God sent him ahead to preserve this. Joseph was God's instrument, you might say. And what part did Joseph play in that? How was Joseph God's instrument? Did God force him to be his instrument? No, he didn't. What could Joseph have done when he first got there? I ain't going to do nothing you want me to do. I'm going to be belligerent. I'm going to be rebellious. And he'd have probably been dead. Joseph's choice, he could have done that. But he didn't. I think we see here how Joseph was raised. If you remember, Joseph was very, very young when Jacob and his family returned to the land of Canaan. And what was one of the things, or what was the thing that God told Jacob when they went back? What did he instruct him to do? And what did Jacob in turn instruct his family to do? Y'all remember? Put away all these idols. Put away all these other gods. And serve God. That was the instructions that Jacob gave his family. We're fixing to cross over to Canaan. You leave all this other stuff here. We don't need that here. We will serve the one true living God, and He'll be the only one we serve. And I think we can see how that Joseph was raised in that mindset. Now, did that make Jacob perfect? No, not by a long shot. He still favored one child more than another. That was rampant in that family. But I think we see here Joseph, the way Joseph was raised, carried him through. His faith in God carried him through. And we see that because he had this level of faith that he had, doesn't mean that his faith wasn't tested. I think we can honestly say when he was on the way to Egypt, he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what was happening. I know he had to wonder about that. And I'm pretty sure that his faith probably may have wavered just a little bit. And then he gets to Potiphar's house and he serves Potiphar well. And then Potiphar's wife pulls her stunt and Joseph gets thrown in jail. What do you think his reaction, his thoughts might have been about that time? You know, he'd been serving God up to this point very well. Do you think that he may have had to wonder, why is this happening to me? Why have you abandoned me, God? But we see everywhere Joseph was, he worked. He worked like he was working for God, and God used him in a very magnificent way. Right up to the point of where we are right now in this, where Joseph is the ruler of all of the land of Egypt. And now he tells his brothers, I am Joseph, whom you sold into slavery. Can you imagine the look on their faces? I bet you every bit of the blood drained out of their face. And now they're wondering, oh, what's he going to do to us? Because he's right, we did it. We straight up did it. And they already knew that God had been working on them. We don't read in this passage yet where they actually make a formal apology to Joseph yet. But that's all right. Joseph is happy to be reunited with his brothers. Joseph is happy that now he knows that his family will be preserved. Joseph is happy that now he's going to get to see his father again. The father that he has not seen in over 20 years. That was a fine reunion, wasn't it? We're going to see, next week we'll finish this chapter and begin the next one, because we're almost out of time today. But can you imagine the, you know, if they were at all like us Southerners, they had to eat again. I mean, you can't do anything in the South without eating. I mean, that's just how it is. And I think, you know, when you're